Good afternoon. I'd like to call the Finance Committee to order, please. And Doug, are there any public comments today?
No public speakers today, sir.
Okay. Then the first order of business, please, is the approval of the minutes of our January 27th, 2014 meeting. Motion, please. Second, please. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are approved. Doug, the work plan, please.
No changes to the work plan?
Then why don't you go right into budgets, budget watch?
Sure. February budget watch, we're going to be talking about January operating results and February subsidy results, which kind of cancel each other out, actually. The snow in January, we had a heavy snowfall, about 20 inches in Central Park compared to the average of 12.7. Which had negative impacts on passenger toll revenue of 16.1 million or 2.9%. New York City Transit passenger revenue was lower by 12.8 million or 3.8%. Metro North was lower by 1.9 million, also 3.8%. BNT toll revenue was 2 million or 1.6% unfavorable. Long Island Railroad passenger revenue was, for whatever reason, not as impacted versus the budget as the other agencies. Their passenger revenue was actually slightly favorable, and we're looking at that. I'm not entirely sure what happened there. Expenses also, they were unfavorable, 27.9 million or 3.6% higher than the budget. The vast majority of that being the impact of snow on overtime and other fringe benefit costs. Also, there was some timing charges from 2013 that rolled into 2014. Debt service costs were 4.5 million or 2.6% unfavorable. That was due to timing. So from the operations and debt service, we were about 49.5 million unfavorable. Now, on the other hand, we have subsidy results that were favorable. PBT was on target. Payroll mobility taxes were lower than budget by 20 million or 6.4%, but we think some of that may very well be timing. The story is the real estate transaction taxes, especially the real property transfer taxes. Year to date through February, they're $84.5 million favorable. So if you net the unfavorable PMT of 20, our subsidies were up 64 million through February. Our operating results were about $50 million unfavorable, so we're slightly better than budget on an overall budget watch basis. Yes, sir.
When you say they're off, when you say the PMT was likely unfavorable due to timing, does that mean
We think we're about $20 million.
No, there's something unplugged down here. Adrian? Does that mean that it's likely
This
or possible
Adrian,
we could
this
see that
works.
in the
This
next
doesn't
quarter?
work. This one's.
Well, we're going to see. This time of year, you have
Now it's on.
the PMT collections this time of year are heavily influenced by bonuses in the financial services industry. There are also impacts the way the state sends the money to us. We have reason to believe that of the 20, some of that may very well be timing, and then there's also the potential impact of when bonuses are paid. So really, it almost makes more sense to look at through March. Now it'll be complicated next month as the state tries to get monies to us within their fiscal year time as well. But it's not something we're real worried about, but it's something we're looking at.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be it for Budget Watch.
Then Pat, Finance Watch, please.
Okay. Finance Watch appears in your committee book on Roman 4-1 today. So we have a few transactions to report. The first is on January 29th, we executed a $15 million fuel hedge with Merrill Lynch Commodities. As you can see here, this was an all-in price of $2.7690 per gallon. This again was competitively bid with our approved counterparties, and the hedge covers December 2014 through December 2015. Next, on January 30th, we issued $250 million of TBTA general revenue bonds, and this is just for ongoing approved capital projects. As you can see here, this resulted in an all-in true interest cost of 4.28%. So it was a very good cost of funds there. The book running senior manager on this was Bank of America Merrill Lynch, and co-senior manager Cabrera Capital Markets. That same day, we also issued a $100 million TBTA bond anticipation note that will be used to finance Sandy-related repair and mitigation projects on an interim basis until either insurance money comes in or FEMA money comes in to pay for those costs. And as you can see here, the note has a final maturity of May 15th, 2015, and our all-in TIC, or true interest cost on this, was a 0.62% for the life of that ban. Next, just last week we priced $400 million of MTA Transportation Revenue Bonds, Series 2014A. This was a two-part transaction. We had about $140 million of currently callable bonds from the 2003A and 2003B issue that were currently refunded. And there we achieved a 19.2 million net present value savings, or 13.12% of the refunded bonds. And then the balance of the transaction, about $268 million, is just generated for new money purposes for existing approved capital projects. This was a transaction that was senior managed by our joint venture senior managers, which is Morgan Stanley, together with Siebert Branford Schenck. And then Labenthal served as special co-senior manager on the deal. What was notable about this transaction was that we achieved an upgrade on this credit from Standard & Poor's the day before pricing. And I think I circulated that around to all of you through email. So you should have that rating report. I think it's a very good report, and something that represents a great deal of work to get S&P to look at the credit differently. And I think we achieved a very good result with the A+ rating. In addition to that, we also they issued an outlook of positive on the credit, which in their lexicon means that over the next 2 years, they believe that there's greater than a 1 in 3 chance that the credit could be upgraded yet again. So as a result of that, we think we had a very good market reception in the retail order period last Wednesday. We had about 284 million orders from retail investors. The following day, when we offered the bonds to institutional investors, we saw a similarly strong reception. There were a couple pockets of bonds that we just didn't get much traction with, and the senior managers did agree to underwrite about 30 million in bonds.
Mr. Chair.
Sorry, Jim.
I'm just a visiting sailor today, but having been through the rating process in a former life, I think you're putting your light under a barrel when you talk about how difficult it is to get a ratings upgrade. That had to have been a tremendously good presentation to pull that off, and I personally would congratulate you.
No. Thank you. We do appreciate the comment. The working group that put this together worked very hard. I would note that our newly selected financial advisor of PFM Group, led by Scott Tromer, helped put that presentation together, and so I think all in all it was a really great group effort to get that rating upgrade. It does. The rating is a result of S&P coming up with new mass transit rating evaluation criteria that they spent a lot of time working on. We commented on the criteria some time ago because there were a few aspects of it that were of concern to us. We think those comments helped. We think our presentation helped because we hit the criteria. On nearly every point, we scored very positively on the criteria. I would note on governance and management, we scored exceptionally well. And again, it's all outlined in here, and it's in your inboxes, and I would just encourage you to refer to that. And happy to take questions now or at some
Pat,
point.
I think the most important thing about this, besides doing a good job, and I think the finance department has really done a good job here over the years with the whole debt issuance. But the biggest thing is it's going to save us money going forward. There's no question. A+ rating's better than A rating, and I think Pat said he saw that on this last issue which is the first issue on the higher rating, right, Pat? That was done.
That's correct.
So it will save money going forward. It's a big deal for us. It's a very good thing, Pat.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So,
I want to jump in too, because so often I jump in on the other side. It's just not everyone who probably deserves an upgrade gets it. So it's a credit to the team for doing so, and good work.
thank you. Okay,
Is that it, Pat? Is that finance?
that wraps up finance watch.
Doug?
Sure. Moving to MTA headquarters and all agency items, we have 3 action items. First being the 2013 TBTA operating surplus. We're seeking approval of a resolution that will certify and transfer $614 million of its operating surplus to the MTA and New York City Transit. Transfer 131 million representing its transferring its 2013 investment income to the MTA. Deduct from the operating revenue for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2014, the amount of $25,900,000, which will be paid into the necessary reconstruction reserve, and deduct from operating revenues for fiscal year ending December 31st, 2014, and set aside into a special account an amount to be determined from time to time by such authority to help fund post-retirement liabilities other than pension benefits of its employees. That's the OPEB account. And to advance the 2014 TBTA surplus.
Now, do you need a...
We need a motion.
Okay,
and a
motion,
vote.
please. Second, please. All in favor? Any opposed? So moved, Doug.
So moved, thank you. The second item would be the mortgage recording tax escalation payments to Dutchess, Orange, and Rockland counties. It is recommended that the board authorize escalator payments totaling $2.8 million to Dutchess, Orange, and Rockland counties from available funds on deposit in the MRT2 corporate transportation account.
Second, please.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? So moved, Doug.
Okay. The next item, which was discussed at the B&T committee meeting, is the Verrazano-Narrows Bridge rebate program. The staff summary requests board approval to adopt the resolution to delegate authority to the MTA chairman and chief executive officer to take such action as may be necessary to appropriate in connection with 2 MTA toll rebate programs at the Verrazano-Narrows Bridge. One being the Verrazano-Narrows Bridge Staten Island Resident Rebate Program, the other being the Verrazano-Narrows Commercial Rebate Program. Both are outlined in Exhibit A attached to the resolution.
So a motion, please.
So moved.
Okay, second?
Mr. Chairman?
Mitch?
we
Yeah,
have a
we will,
question.
we'll do it, but I just want to get the motion.
Oh, okay.
Mitch, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to comment on this matter. We discussed it just very quickly in B&T, and I have no problem at all with the transaction being taken. However, I do have a problem with the narrowness of the transaction being taken. It seems to me that there are situations all across the region where additional fairness, for lack of a better term, should be incorporated. And whether that fairness is personified by the toll that somebody pays going over a bridge, or the fairness in relation to the service that someone gets depending on where they're living at the moment. To me, fairness is fairness. And that's the only concern I have with this resolution. I would like to move an amendment to this resolution to add $3 million to the MTA portion of it. Obviously, we can't add to the state legislative portion, although it would be nice if they did so. But in their absence, I would like to add $3 million to the MTA apportionment of this resolution. $2 million of that to go to New York City Transit and MTA Bus. for the following enhancements: extending the J train on weekends to Broad Street, extending the B37 bus to Court Street in downtown Brooklyn, returning the M104 to East 42nd Street, and adding weekend service on the S66 bus in Staten Island. In addition to that, $500,000 to Metro North for additional service west of the Hudson and additional options, and $500,000 to the Long Island Railroad to restore West Hempstead service on the weekends and other options of the railroad. It seems to me, based upon our conversations that we took place in December and the conversations we have had in relation to service enhancements, that this is a fair and equitable apportionment of funds throughout the region to ensure that everybody living, no matter where they're living, gets a benefit from these additional funds. It does not in any way subtract from the funds being appropriated or apportioned for the Staten Island rebate program. It just adds funds beyond the Staten Island rebate program to others living in the other parts of the region. I'd like to move that amendment, Mr. Chairman.
We will have a vote on the amendment, obviously, but I just wanted...
Second, Mr. Chairman?
I'm sorry, you want to, okay, so we have a second, and now we have the amendment. I'd just like to speak on the amendment for a second. As you know, I guess it was December, Doug, when we did the final budget.
Yeah, it was voted on in December.
Right. We said, and we, in past practice, the last time we did service enhancements, when we got to the July Finance Committee meeting, we would take a look at where we stand with the budget, take a look at our expenses, take a look at our financial situation, and at that time, and I know the chairman himself has weighed in on this, we will have a detailed discussion of any of these things. I think it's not appropriate now to add on to these things when we have a lot of uncertainty facing us, and we all know what those uncertainties are, to add on possible liabilities and expenses to the organization at this time. So I feel very strongly that we should vote no on the amendment, not forever, but to basically waylay it until July till we see where we stand at that time. Next is Alan.
Mitch Paley, my partner in crime, knows exactly how to appeal to the things I care most about, which is on the service side. However, I am going to oppose the amendment for a couple of reasons, and urge a support for the resolution originally moved without change. The reasons being forth, first of all, the Staten Island Rebate Program is a program that is funded entirely by monies from the legislature. It's similar to the Rockaway program that this board adopted. It is. Okay, similar to the program, it was modeled after, and this goes back to my discussions with Joe Loda back in 2012, working through the period of time. The total cost of these two programs is $14 million. The additional $7 million is not a Staten Island program. It is a regional program. It is available to people throughout the region. Everybody is eligible who participates in the system. It is not unique just to the people of Staten Island. People in Staten Island will benefit from it, particularly since they're held captive by the bridge, but people in Brooklyn who have to go back and forth over it, or people in Queens or Long Island or whatever your area is. So it's not Staten Island specific. So from a perspective of fairness, okay, I think that goes to at least address part of the fairness issue. With respect to the issue of the program itself, this is, as I said, something that we have discussed for a long time. The prior chairman felt that there was something that we should be doing. I'm pleased that the current chairman Tom Prendergast has come around to agreeing with that position, as well as good for the region. The governor, the majority leader of the Senate, Speaker Sheldon Silver, are all in support of this and see it as an important initiative for the state and for the region. The local legislators, led by Michael Cusick, came up with the money to pay for the local piece of the Staten Island rebate program. I would ask that, in addition, I had the same conversation that Mitch had about many of the same items that he enumerated. I was even more specific about some of the Long Island issues with respect to Long Island Railroad, Port Washington line, B-37, the weekend service that's needed in Long Island, bus service and train service throughout the region. I think that the number Mitch is talking about is too low in terms of doing that. I think that there are a lot of things that we need to do, but we did agree to wait for that portion of the program until we got closer to looking at in April or May, and I will make those arguments at that time. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You do that.
Thank you, Andrew. I think it's a laudable goal to correct a long-standing, I want to point out, unfair situation to the residents of Staten Island. So I would definitely support the initial resolution that's before us. And I think it was terrific of the Senate, Assembly, Governor's leadership to get there. But I also think I would support Mitch's amendment. But I want to raise some concerns I have as a board member with the fiduciary duty to the MTA organization. I think that I have some governance concerns because our budget is set by us, and we're a public benefit corporation, and to the extent we have things coming in the middle of our budget year like this, I don't think it's our duty to turn down funds given to us, but I do worry about the integrity of us as an organization with governance issues when we're supposed to be adopting our own budget. I'm concerned about the availability of the money, particularly in future years, and I definitely do not want this tied in to the unfortunately growing amount of money that we get through appropriations. And I do want to point out that the best way to finance our system would be through dedicated revenue stream, better than the increasing reliance on appropriations. I also want to point out that I did have a discussion internally, but for the record, because I was concerned, I guess given what I do in my day job, that the bondholder covenants were not being violated by this, and I was given the assurance that this was carefully analyzed, and that bond counsel had opined that this program and what we're about to probably adopt would not violate the covenants. But I also want to point out that I, in the past, have been told for the 2.5 years I've been here, of the way we do service improvements is not just to pick out one favorite aspect of the system and throw money at it, because I asked this the very first few times that the Capelli team that seems to have split on this, interestingly. I asked that, and I was educated by them and by Joe Loda and others as to how MTA has traditionally done it, and it did make a lot of sense. Now all of a sudden I point out that the Metro North and LIRR are being shortchanged by this, by not being included. However, again, I raise those concerns as a board member with fiduciary duty, but I will support both Mitch's amendment, but also the underlying proposal as well.
I just wanted to add that I am, as I indicated earlier, I'm not opposed to the Staten Island rebate program. And if that's what it was, then that's what we would do in that context. And I will vote yes, not whether this amendment goes up or down on that proposal, because I have been convinced by my fellow commissioner that fairness has been long delayed. Is that a fair way of putting it in regard to that issue? However, fairness has also been delayed with a number of other enhancements. And the only thing I wanted to say beyond that is if this had come up in July, when everything else was supposed to come up, we would not be having this discussion. And that's when I think this should have come up, is in July, when everything else is on the table, as the chairman indicated at the December meeting. I think it is unfair at this time to only do part and not the other part, which is why my amendment is there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I am particularly sensitive to suggestions that something is fair or unfair, and it causes me to want to look behind all these things, but not this one, because this one's pretty straightforward. It's not like we have not talked about the unique issues on Staten Island for a very long time. It's not a mystery to any one of us. And rather than, Mr. Chairman, make micro policy here at the board, well, a couple of million here, a couple of million there, which is the wrong way, I think, for this board to approach its job, my own personal opinion, I would recommend a no vote on, with all due respect to Mr. Pally, no vote on the amendment and a yes vote on the underlying proposal.
The first thing is to vote on Mitch's amendment. Mark, did you want to say something? You're out of commission. Okay.
I guess that I have certainly been listening to the discussion on this topic today. I abstained from the vote in Bridges and Tunnels because of my underlying concern with our mission in terms of transportation, but particularly mass transportation, and the allocation of resources to subsidize a portion of the traffic over our bridges, and exactly how best to cut the balance between that and investing resources in mass transportation, whether it be bus, subway, paratransit, whatever it is, that is more down the main line of what I perceive as our mission. As I said earlier today, I'm not sure, perhaps there is a compelling argument for this particular proposal. I'm not there yet. I abstained this morning and intend to abstain now. In terms of the proposed amendment, it is down the lines of what I'm interested in, although again I think that more considered thought and balancing of priorities it probably makes sense, and I would therefore intend to vote against the proposed amendment at this time.
Now, Doug, would you please repeat Mitch's amendments, and then we can vote on it? We have amendment and we have a second, but I just want
I
Doug
believe
to
I believe Mitch agreed with the original intent of the Verrazano Narrow Bridge rebate programs. However, the amendment would have also added a total of $3 million in service, $2 million, which would be for various New York City transit and MTA bus service initiatives, and the remaining $1 million split evenly between Metro North and Long Island Railroad. I don't recall the specific items, but yeah.
Is that correct, Mitch?
Yes.
Okay, so all in favor of Commissioner Paley's amendment? Those opposed? Okay, the amendment fails. Now the original proposal amendment, which we have on the floor, and we have a second, for the toll rebate program on the Verrazano Bridge. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That amendment, that motion passes. Okay. Who abstained? Oh, I'm sorry, Mark, that's correct. One abstention, everybody else was in favor.
I'd like to thank Commissioner Pally for bringing this issue to everybody's attention. I think every one of the projects that he mentioned in his motion are very worthy projects that should never have been removed in those now infamous service cuts of 2010, and I hope the board is true to, and I believe everybody is, and we'll revisit this issue again in July, because some of these things are just, actually, the MTA has lost money because of some of these cuts. People have actually left those modes of transportation, so I look forward to July.
You know you have the commitment of Tom Prendergast and the Finance Committee in July when we, review the budget and we see where we stand. Just like I said, we will take all these things under consideration at that time. Okay.
Okay, now we're going to move to report and information items. The first one being the change order report to the Finance Committee. In July of 2013, the board approved an increase to the change order approval threshold from what was $250,000 to $750,000 per transaction, effective immediately, really to take into consideration inflation over a very long time period. What the board did ask for was that we would report on a quarterly basis for information only those items that would have been included within committee agendas and no longer were. And there's a short list that's on section 5, page 19 for your information.
Okay, we don't need a vote on that.
No, we do not. The second item being the February financial plan. Just to refresh your memory, that's not something that we asked for a vote on. It's really, it's just really putting into place that which you voted upon in December. We make it, there might be a few technical adjustments. We take below the line actions, and then we move them into the baseline, and then we calendarize them. So that's the basis for our monthly reporting to the board. There are a few technical adjustments that are of note and that had impacts on the bottom line. Number one being the budget itself had assumed for the Subway Surface Supervisors Association and Transit Supervisors Organization, TSO, we had assumed an increase of 4%, 4%, and 0% for the period ending 2012. When in fact the arbitrator awarded them 4%, 4%, and 3%. So in that third year it was 3% instead of 0, and the impact to our financial plan was is $24 million in 2013, 13 in 2014, and $5 million thereafter. The 2013 rolled into 2014. So that was a negative impact. Also included, that what we didn't include in our plan was the Fulton Street Transit Center operating impacts. They are now included. We also will be getting additional revenues from those agreements. Those revenues will not impact our finances until 2018, so they don't really impact the financial plan period. The net impact of that resulted in 2015 cash going into a negative territory, but also included within 2015 was the assumption that we would invest $30 million to reduce our pension liability in order to retain cash solvency in 2015. We're reducing that amount by $10 million. So the net impact of all of that is our what would have been cash projected surpluses of 212 in 2013, 106, 44, 61, and then finally in 2017 minus 191. We now have a slightly different picture of 217 million in 2013, 64 in 2014, 4 million in 2015, 9 million in 2016, and an increase in the projected cash deficit to 255 million in 2017. Again, that's for your information. I believe you've all gotten copies of the books. You don't have the level of detail that you see in the November and July plans, but really there are very few changes between that, and the detail is you can find online in the November plan books.
Procurements.
Okay. Moving next to procurements. We have 4 competitive procurements for headquarters for a grand total of $8,412,000. Need a motion?
Second, please. All in favor? Any opposed? So moved.
Okay, we have nothing for Metro North, nothing for Long Island Railroad, moving next to New York City Transit and MTA Bus. We have 2 procurements for New York City Transit for a grand total of $5,300,000. One is a non-competitive procurement jointly with MTA Bus at $5,300,000, and the other is a competitive procurement for an RFP for a fleet purchase amount to be determined.
A motion, please. Second, please. All in favor? Any opposed? So moved, Doug.
Okay, there's no items for bridges and tunnels. There are no items for FIMTAC. Included in the book are the financial reports for preliminary 2012, and then next would be real estate action items.
Okay, Jeff?
Thanks, Doug. Thanks, Andrew. There are 4 action items this month, each the subject of a staff summary. I believe they're generally self-explanatory. There was some discussion this morning, however, about a proposed disposition of the old station building at Ardsley on Hudson, so I just want to address that briefly. We've had some discussion in the interim with a couple of board members who had expressed concern at the Metro North meeting. We very strongly recommend this action. We've been trying to market this property since 2010. It was formerly an overpass that connected this station through an old co-op building adjoining the station, and then onto the southbound platform. But that overpass was damaged, fell down. There's more recently been constructed a new heated overpass, which is where in practice the passengers wait for trains. It's south of the building in question, and as was noted at the meeting, this does not figure to provide us with very much affirmative income, just a $50,000 lump sum, but this is all about avoided cost. We have annual maintenance expenses of just under $100,000 a year, and estimated cost to put this building into a state of good repair of in excess of $3 million. The question was raised this morning, couldn't we just mothball the building and spend a small fraction of that money? And the answer in consultation with the engineers is no. All but about $500,000 of that money would be required just to shut the building down. As I say, it is an historic building subject to State Historic Preservation Officer requirements, and it will be the affirmative obligation of the lessee to fix the building up and take care of it for the duration. The other question that was raised is, well, isn't this in fact an appropriate site for a transit-oriented development? The answer is assuredly not. This is a very narrow sliver of property that we control. There's municipal parking, Village of Irvington parking just south of it, but it's a very, very narrow site, and no opportunity there for, this is not a development site. Yeah, John.
Jeff, what if they don't adhere to the state legal requirements with respect to their historic renovations and whatever other applicable laws?
Well, first and foremost, they will be beholden to the State Historic Preservation Officer, which will be responsible for passing on plans and enforcing those requirements. But it will be a covenant, a restriction, a condition of the lease. It's tantamount to a sale, but it is structured as a lease because, as you may know, we don't own the fee that property. Right. It would be a default and a cause for revert if they didn't do it.
But would it revert to us if there's a default under the lease, or would that not be an event of default?
No, it'd be an event of default.
And it would revert to us?
Yeah, that's the idea.
I'm sorry?
That's the idea, yeah.
And then what, so how is the appraisal $100,000 if, I mean, how do you have an appraisal that doesn't take into account certain factors?
It's not uncommon in appraisals for an appraiser to say something like, I express no view as to whether there are hazardous materials on the site. I express no view as to whether the building is structurally sound or requires other than cosmetic repairs. That's what happened in this instance. The appraiser said $100,000, assuming it's structurally sound and no repairs required except for cosmetic ones. That's not the case.
So, right, but when trying to calculate the value, then a long-term owner would use different factors and would basically take into effect depreciation. Let's say it takes $2 million, but in 20 years it'll be worth.
As I say, that was the appraiser's valuation of lump sum payment for the duration of the leasehold.
How much did we spend on the upkeep in the past year for this facility?
I'm not aware that we have spent appreciable amounts of money from the capital budget, which is to say there's been deferred maintenance. We spend, as I say, about $90,000 a year to maintain it.
Okay, what else?
Jim?
Thank you. As the person who raised that this issue at the finance at the Metro North Committee meeting this morning, I just want to make it clear that I've been provided with materials which certainly bear out the things that Jeff has mentioned and established that, or I've been assured that this property has only a marginal, if any, transportation value both now and into the next 260 years. So, having said that, I would withdraw my objection, and I want to free my delegates to vote their conscience.
Thank you, Jim.
Jenny, what's the motion?
To approve the 4 items, if we can.
Motion second on the 4 items, real estate items. Second, please. Second. Any opposed?
Thanks very much.
Second.